In this short revision video, I'm going to focus on topic 7b, which is all about the reproductive organs and cells within both men and women. Now, we want to start off by looking at the reproductive organs within men and women, and we're going to start off by looking at the male reproductive system. As you can see from this image on the right-hand side, a male will have a sex cell, and that sex cell is called a sperm cell. Now, sperm are produced in these glands you can see in the purple, and they are called the testes. Now, once the sperm is produced, the sperm can be produced throughout a man's lifetime after he has gone through puberty, and that sperm will travel through this tube, which is called the sperm duct. After it has traveled through that tube, it will then pass into a further tube called the urethra, and that urethra then will allow the sperm to exit the body. Now, interestingly, you can see up here there is the bladder. This is part of the urinary system of a male. That is where urine will be stored, and that urine will also pass through the same tube as the sperm, called the urethra. So both will pass through that tube out of the body. Now, in a woman, it is slightly different, and you can see it quite clearly in this image on the left-hand side. A woman will also have a bladder where her urine is stored, and that urine will exit the body through the urethra. Now, you can see the pink part of this image is the female reproductive system, and that is separate from her bladder and her urethra. Now, if you look over to this one on the right-hand side, it's a little bit clearer. A woman, like a male, will have two glands, except in this case, these glands are called her ovaries. And when a baby girl is born, she will be born with all of her undeveloped follicles inside her ovaries, and she will not produce any more throughout her lifetime. Now, as she hits puberty and gets older, those undeveloped follicles will start to mature into eggs. And every single month, she will release one of those eggs into the oviduct. Now, as the egg moves along the oviduct, it's actually helped by little cells which have hair-like structures on them. And those hairs will wave back and forth to help the egg move towards the next section of her reproductive system, which is here, and this is called the uterus. It can also sometimes be referred to as the womb. And this is where, if a woman did have a fertilized egg, the egg would implant on the lining here, and the baby would eventually grow and develop in this uterus. Now, from the uterus, you can see that we have this small opening. That small opening here is called the cervix, and eventually it will then lead down into the vagina of the woman. So these are both of the male and the female reproductive systems. Now, if you want to, this slide details some questions for you. You can stop here and you can pause the slides and have a go at these questions. I have included all of the answers on the next slide for you to mark any of your answers. These are the answers for the questions on the previous slide. If you want to mark your answers, again, you can pause this slide. After you've marked them, you can carry on. So, having looked at the reproductive systems in both men and women, we now want to have a look at what cells are produced in both men and women. And the first one, in the male reproductive system, we said that the male sex cell is actually called a sperm cell. Now, those sperm cells are produced in the glands, again, which we saw in our previous slides, called the testes. Now, one thing that you do need to focus on are some of the adaptations of a sperm cell. And you can see some of these adaptations on this slide. One of the main things about the sperm is that it is designed and it's adapted to swim and move as well as possible towards the egg whenever they are meeting inside of a woman. And you can see here at the top of the sperm cell, it has a really special shape, and we would say it is streamlined. Just like I said, to move as well as possible towards the egg. Importantly, on the top of the head, there is also a section that contains substances called enzymes, and those enzymes allow the sperm to attack the outside of the egg cell. And in turn, that allows the sperm cell then to burrow inside the egg cell. Again, to help the sperm move as quickly as possible, it has this long tail section which allows it to swim. And in order to swim, It needs lots of energy, and that energy is released by organelles. And those little organelles are located in this section of the sperm between the head and the tail, and that's where your mitochondria are. And it's the mitochondria that releases the egg in order for the tail to move so that the sperm can swim. The second one then is the female sex cell. The female sex cell is called an egg cell. Sometimes it can be referred to as an ovum as well. And like we said before, these are released or produced in the ovaries of the woman. Some of the adaptations of an egg, you can see here, the main one is this outside section of the egg. So the egg is much bigger in the sperm, and it has this thick section on the outside called the jelly coat. Now, before the sperm enters, that jelly coat is to protect the egg. But after a little sperm has entered into the egg cell, that jelly coat will harden up, and it allows only one sperm to enter, and it stops any more sperm from entering into the egg. Another adaptation of an egg cell that's very, very important is that the cytoplasm here on this inside layer contains lots of nutrients, and it's also a store of food, and that food then will provide energy for the fertilized egg cell. So hopefully in this presentation you've gained some knowledge on some of the structures within the male and female reproductive system, and also some of the adaptations of the sperm and egg cells, which are the sex cells of men and women.